Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Conversations about Transformation, the keys to lasting change. This is a series, if you're not familiar yet, between our master trainers here at NLP Marin and some of our graduates who have incorporated transformational NLP, this unique toolbox, into their lives and work. And we're going to be exploring that as well as their unique perspectives on transformation and change and what makes that actually lasting. All of this is particularly relevant. We are here now at the top of 2022. The beginning of the year is when everybody's attention is on change and new creative projects and really bringing them to fruition and what makes them stick. So we're going to dive right in. If you don't know us at NLP Marin, we are the only place in the world to learn transformational NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. And that is a unique modality of healing and change. Our students go through our curriculum, they do their own personal growth work, and they learn this cutting edge tools, technologies, skills, and bring it back into their lives and their work in unique ways that are really inspiring, as you will see. So welcome to today's conversation. We have a great title. We're calling it Creating Extraordinary Relationships. What your partner is trying to tell you but doesn't know how. So this is a conversation between Jennifer Russell. Jennifer, will you raise your hand and just say hi?
Hi, great to be here.
Jennifer is many things, but we'll limit it to leadership strategist and relationship coach for our purposes today.
Yes.
And then we also have Carl Buchheit, who is the co-founder of NLP Marin. I'll introduce them more in just a moment. I am LiYana Silver. I'm also a happy, proud graduate of NLP Marin. It's been a while. I think I graduated in 2009. And I also transfer the tools and the perspectives of transformational NLP into my private practice. I'm a transformational coach for women. I work at in the marketing department at NLP Marin. And I'm going to just be the MC and help the conversation flow for today. So I'm going to officially read some information about Jennifer, and Jennifer, you can chime in if you want to add to it as we go. So Jennifer Russell is a dyed-in-the-wool entrepreneur that has founded over a dozen businesses and has worked on the executive teams of several high-impact startups, helping bring more than 40 new technologies to market in a dozen different industries. She has led nearly a decade of transformational and professional training programs designed to liberate people from self-imposed limiting beliefs and the underlying assumptions that create what is possible. Her unique coaching and speaking style incorporates the best of neurolinguistic programming, NLP, and about 8,000 other modalities. I'm going to read a few. These are just fantastic. Human potential movement, family systems, collaborative systems, attachment theory, neuroscience, and certainly an entire body of work that she and her partner in Life and Love, Brian Franklin, have created around love and relationships and leadership. Did I forget anything important, Jennifer? We can also add it as we go.
No, I think that was perfect.
That's great. Now, all of you should know Jennifer and I are not only colleagues, but friends. And I am so happy to be in this conversation. So glad you're here.
Yeah, really excited to be here.
Yeah. And Carl Buchheit is the co-founder of NLP Marin, beloved mentor to so many, and certainly to Jennifer and myself. For over 40 years, I actually mentioned, Carl, I mentioned you in my book, and at that time, I think it was over 35 years. Time marches on, 40 years. I just want to respect those many decades. Carl has practiced, taught, and extended the technology now known as transformational NLP. Carl trains from the heart, backed with a brilliant intellect, insatiable curiosity, and unconventional humor. The result is a fun-filled learning experience where all aspects of the students and their lives are welcomed and included. Carl has been involved in NLP since the mid-70s, I should say 1970s. He is certainly one of the finest practitioners of NLP in the world, and quite possibly the busiest. He challenges his students to explore themselves, the world, and life in a way that respects and uplifts everyone. His ongoing intense private practice with clients keeps what he presents fresh and alive. Well, it's an honor to be here with you both. Yeah. Carl, did you want to add anything in there?
No, I was just thinking that we should say that you're not working in the NLP Marin marketing department. You're working in the NLP Marin marketing tower.
Oh,
okay?
yes.
Yes, you are building something really beautiful. Okay, never mind.
Well, thank you. It's the crux of this relationship today. I'll say this because it's about you two, but the crux of it is about how the powerful, unique frames and perspectives and tools of transformational NLP that you have extended and co-created, Carl, can influence so many different fields in a way that what is emergent is not only feels good, but is often never seen before. So that's been a really fun and unique challenge with marketing at NLP Marin. So,
well, that also is extremely well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it feels good, and you haven't seen it before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it doesn't sound so bad, really.
Yeah, it doesn't go down too hard. Yeah. So let's talk about creating extraordinary relationships. Jennifer, we'll back into that. Will you share what your life and your work is like these days, especially as you've incorporated transformational NLP?
Sure. Yeah. So as someone who is doing both one-on-one coaching and group training work with clients, I'd say if I'm about one thing, it's really about healing the divide. Right? Healing the divide wherever it resides, whether it's between, in the matters of love, it might be the masculine and feminine duking it out, or it might be the material and the spiritual worlds in business that's trying to work itself out, or even in some of my race and social justice work, there's a lot of divisions there. So I would say that as a kind of a dharmic path I feel like I'm on, it's in this idea of how can we, as those that are feeling charged with helping do something about the current state of affairs, how can we help be the bridge across what this incredibly divisive and polarized world? And so just relating that to transformational NLP, it's an absolute foundation in understanding why are we so polarized. And most of that is because we're such a conflagration of so many parts that aren't aligned. And whether they're inside of us and we see them inside of us, or whether we're actually externalizing those parts outside of us, for me, transformational NLP was sort of a window into what sort of feels like a superpower to other people. But when you realize and do the work, it's actually something anyone can learn, which is the ability to spot major and minor misalignments in the people that are all around you, and in your ability to spot those, help shore those up so that they're all pointing in the same direction. So that's a piece of transformation. It's one of my most beloved tools too. All of that work, Carl, that you taught us around parts alignment is something that just lives in me and lives in almost every session that I do. I'm always looking for those misalignments and how to recapture and realign those parts. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jennifer, before we dive into that, Carl, will you share a little bit for anybody who's listening or watching that might not know about parts work, or just how you see it, how you see it and work with it?
Well, before I say anything else, our approach to parts work has a different orientation. It comes from a similar place, but it works out. How shall I say this? It unfolds how stuff happens inside of us individually. It pays attention to that in a way that is different than conventional internal family systems work or other kinds of things that have been evolved out of that frame, which is, gee, golly, nobody's just one person. I mean, everybody is like, part of me wants to, but part of me wants to, we start right there. But part of me wants to finish my essay, part of me wants to watch HBO, right? So, and I don't mean to slight any other network or program. So, what we so a lot of internal family systems adjustments and so forth are based on a premise that these aspects of consciousness, which is how I prefer to think about parts, they're aspects of consciousness. They're aspects of our consciousness, but they do have their own. And if we have any generalization about it, it's that they exist to fulfill themselves by fulfilling us. And there are some really valid and really useful approaches to parts work that regard parts as having individual personalities with needs and fears and prejudices and desires, and this is, I think, really useful in the right time and place, but sometimes it just explodes on people so that they end up having, well, shall we use the word division here, a massively divided internal experience, so that they can't actually, they themselves are having great difficulty, like feeling okay about feeling okay, or feeling, to use Jennifer's word, aligned with where they want to be going. So to come back to your question, LiYana, as best I can, rather than chase down and having to wrangle and settle down and negotiate among hundreds or thousands of disparate desires and intentions that go with different identities inside of us, all right, I'll say again, sometimes that's useful, it has its place. We regard the operation of parts as aspects of consciousness that exist to fulfill us in response to what we want. We designate the person themselves as the senior consciousness. The senior consciousness is the only part of us that is, shall I say, competent and authorized to make choices about what we want. We don't actually know how to do anything at the senior consciousness level. I mean, I can go like that, but I don't know how that happens. But I can make the choice to wiggle my finger. The rest of it is up to something else. So these internal parts, internal aspects of consciousness, they do not have the authority to make choices for us. They can't re-choose anything. What they do is they fulfill precisely what they have been instructed to fulfill. And if we're polite, we'll say what they've been asked to fulfill. The difficulty is that we don't stay in communication with ourselves, hardly at all, most of the time. And so what Jennifer is referring to, which is just a small part of what she does, but it's a format for straightforwardly being able to communicate with ourselves consciously, with conscious attention and awareness and very little mystery, in a really, really direct way, and just sort some things out pleasantly and with humor, right? Ideally. And they're often astonishing discoveries. Oh my gosh, no wonder I'm like that.
Thank you. This is so rich. Jennifer, anything you want to add? So there's certainly we're misaligned when parts of us want different things, and share anything you want, but also what's the process of alignment that you tend to really find that works well?
Yeah. Well, let me just add, because it gets really, it's already incredibly rich. Like I so love what Carl brings in here, because we're not only just a few parts, but there are maybe hundreds, if not thousands, of different parts that all have their own ideas. And when we can start to shine a little bit more light on some of the unconscious parts that are under the surface, that are creating what can feel like a lot of tension in the system, where it seems like you're moving towards what you want, and so many people are confounded at why they're not doing the thing that they know that they want, that they've wanted their whole lives. And I feel like transformational NLP gives you a really in-depth understanding of why that's the case. Like, why is it this case that this thing that I want, that I say that I want, that society would even give me a green light that I want, is somehow elusive. So I love that we have this understanding. And so for someone like me who's working with someone in a session or in a group format, what I'm doing is just noting and spotting these little misalignments and calling another tool from NLP that is incredibly near and dear to my heart is this idea of appreciation of the present state, right? Is a lot of times our parts are creating the tension because we're not all right with ourselves, right? And so if we as the coach can bring in just an utter appreciation of the present state and remind them that those parts are indeed lovable, that they're actually not trying to sabotage you, that they actually have an agenda. They may not have a very mature strategy and way of going about achieving that agenda, because again, like Carl said, that they're not qualified to make the choice. But if we can really get in under the surface and not try to hide, fade, or fix those parts for just a moment, give them the space to arise and exist and appreciate what it is that they're actually trying to create in our lives, that can actually loosen a lot of the tension that's happening inside the system. And so that we can get them all on board and we can have a lot more power and influence and more of what we want. So a lot of the coaching for me is around applying a little bit of NLP's parts alignment work alongside of this appreciation of the present state, where we're really looking into what is the desired state and how can this part actually get on board with us. So that's a little bit of what's going on.
And on board is where they want to be.
Yes.
And very often it's where they think they are until they like discover, oops.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So I would just say, if it's okay with me that I'm feeling all I'm feeling and thinking all I'm thinking and being all that I'm being, then as a coach, I can create a field where the client starts to feel okay about what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and what they're being. And this is essential in creating that integration, that parts alignment. And so and then the parts that are the most afraid of being judged, that are really under the surface, that are really unconscious, like then those parts start to realize they're safe to actually show up and come to the party and be dealt with, be talked to, be considered in the whole mix. And so that creating that level of trust is an incredibly important part of transformational NLP. Yeah, and my work.
And really nicely said.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, a couple of threads I'd like to follow a little bit more. And Carl, maybe you can add to this too. So there's these presuppositions or phrases that we use that have become so second nature and obvious, but I want to skip over this one, which is appreciating the present state. And to have a part of us that has hidden our entire lives out of shame or fear, to be able to come forward, that's a powerful tool. So this is for both of you. Maybe Carl, if you don't mind starting, anything more to share about appreciation of this part or what is presently here? It sounds simple. It's not. It's quite profound.
It's well, it's both simple and like immensely profound, and all simultaneously. My experience of coming up to the place where that phrase unfolded for me as I was working with people and with myself, appreciating the present state. Present state is NLP slang for what's going on right now. NLP slang for where we would like to be. The experience we would like to have is desired state. That's pretty straightforward, present state and desired state. I'll just back up a little bit, a lot of the original NLP, the methodologies are really gorgeous, but some of the attitude in the 1970s and early into the 80s, through the 80s, and actually I'm going to get carried away here into the 90s. A lot of NLP was, because the toolbox is so good, it's just so strong, it's so direct, it's so useful. A lot of people slid into it and they said, we can use this to annihilate our limitations. We can use this to eliminate blocks and obstacles. We'll just take what's going on right now and we'll just make it stop. We'll destroy it, we'll get rid of it, and we'll replace it with what we want. And even with that kind of heavy duty sort of destructomatic orientation, the methodology is so graceful that that would still work just fine. Only it occurred to me over time as I was working with all of this, that if we discover a more powerful and successful, a more powerful way to more successfully defeat ourselves about something, who is it exactly who wins in that situation? So the appreciating the present state is not about saying, oh, it's great or it's fine. It's not even saying it's okay, because it's probably not okay. But there is this really graceful thing that happens when we cease resisting what we're already experiencing. And then right away again, people think, well, that means I'm going to have to be okay with what I don't want. We're saying, no, this is not. We don't want it to be okay. We want what you would like to experience to be what you are experiencing. But rather than taking 3/4 of your energy and your creativity and devoting it to trying to not experience what you already are, let's take a moment, let you experience what you already are, which releases all kinds of weight. And talk about obstacles and anyway, that stuff just kind of goes for a minute. And then it is much easier to redirect all this really extraordinary creative faculty that we all have, to direct it toward what we want. And this is so much easier to do than it is to talk about. Maybe Jennifer can say that much more usefully.
I love what you shared. And I just want to, I'll just add like a little piece that I found incredibly enlightening about this, because when you say those words, some people pull up this idea of kind of like a saccharine coach being like, oh, I just so appreciate you. Aren't you wonderful? And let me tell you how great you are. And so when we say appreciation of the present state, you might be calling those kinds of ideas to mind. And just profoundly, this is not what either of us are talking about. What's really happening is allowing what's present to fully express itself, to fully be there. So in a moment, let's say, and a client is just in total and utter grief, there's no place in me that needs to hide, fade, or fix or change that grief, but instead can appreciate that it's there. And if any of it is under the surface, just be with it with so much fullness that it actually can surface. And so it's not like, oh, no, don't be sad. Let me appreciate all the good things in life. That would be the opposite of what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the ability to have the range as a coach, as someone who wants to be in support of someone, to allow what's there to be there. And in so doing, the tension in the system from it trying to hide and not actually be in the conscious awareness of the client starts to dissipate. So I just wanted to add that little piece to appreciation and the idea that it's a counterintuitive idea that if you appreciate what is, you'll somehow get the thing that you want. And for most people, that's a logical leap that is hard to understand. Because you would think, well, no, I want to resist what is because what I want is over there. So I don't want to have more of what's here. And so most of us, the reason we're in all this tension and needing support is because that's what we're doing, is we're resisting what is as we're trying to run towards what it is that we want, which is not having what we have now. And so the idea, one of the important premises of NLP and in the work that I do with couples, both together and individually, is this idea that we actually have to loosen that tension by allowing what's present and having the whole system get right with what's here. And from there, that actually is the right place to start the integration work in order to get to where you want. And you can't skip that step. And a lot of coaches skip that step and they go straight to strategy and they go straight to accountability. And then they wonder why the clients know what they should do. And they have people checking up on them and keeping them accountable. And yet something in the system is in the way. And this is usually a big piece of what's there. So I just wanted to add that piece on.
Thank you.
Appreciation of the present state. Yeah.
And the word appreciate in English is really kind of magical. My reference for the experience for the word is being in the 8th grade, standing in the principal's office with a couple of friends of mine and having the principal say, I don't think you boys really appreciate the situation you're in. So it has that kind of meaning too. Like, let's be really real about what's
Let's be real.
Yeah.
What's really here? Like, can we actually be in contact with it? Yes, so good.
Yes, that's something that I'll never forget that. So Jennifer, you were saying a moment ago, so this idea of appreciating the present state and creating safety, right? These are just essentials to do for helping you align with yourself, doing alignment work. Are there other qualities that you would add to that really must be present as a practitioner or as a coach in not just to do good work, but to have clients have this deep sense of trust with who they're working with?
Yeah. So, there's this idea of like you pace before you lead someone somewhere. And even if we in our work if supporting people already sort of know the quote unquote answer, there's some deep work to be done in pacing with the client and getting into rapport and really getting into the inquiry deeply enough so that the light bulb goes on and they go, she gets me. She fully gets me. There's nothing left out. And the same advice that you might want to insert before you've done that will usually get kicked out of the system as, no, wait a minute, you don't get it. And so you were asking the question, like, how do you engender trust? And I think a piece of that trust is got to be doing enough of the pacing and inquiry and allowing the client to really fully feel felt and known before jumping too fast and too quickly into whatever it is that you're trying to get across to them. So I think that's a piece of trust. I think both can you really love the most unlovable parts in them? I've often said that the only problem with the worst parts of you is your inability to accept them. Right. And so if you as a coach can fully accept and love the most unlovable parts by appreciating, allowing them to fully be present, and at the same time pace with them, right, you can create a lot of trust. And I think that's required for anything to go in because we have a lot of guards up. Right. There's a lot of walls up to prevent new ideas from going in. The system has created a whole homeostasis about being exactly where it is. And so we're doing really delicate work in a way to change that system, to change those beliefs. So you've really got to kind of tread lightly there, tread carefully there. Maybe not lightly, but carefully.
A really fine distinction. Yes.
Carl, anything to add about this idea of pacing before suggesting or strategizing or leading the client somewhere?
Well, pacing, of course, is NLP lingo for stepping into, as best one can, sharing the other person's map of the world, their model of reality a little bit more, rather than expecting them to step over into ours, which is what we all instinctively do. Two people meet each other and each of them sort of expects the other to, cross the divide, so to speak. So it's really much more useful to share someone's world with them if we're seeking to be of use to them or allow them to be of use to us, than standing on our map and with a megaphone and yelling over at them, do this, stand over that way, you know, try harder, whatever, right? It's just a basic thing. It's so basic that it's pretty much where all good NLP training begins.
But both of you have said, and so let's see if there's anything more to say, there may or may not, about kind of a not only a willingness, but the skill to go first, meaning I'll appreciate these parts of you before you know how. I will actually consider these parts of you lovable before you even have that concept. And perhaps that's part of what makes it okay for you. Is there anything else either of you would want to add to that?
I'm pretty sure a big part of our job is to respect and appreciate the aspects of another person, a little bit for them and then with them, until they're able to do that for themselves, in which case we can continue to do it. Yeah.
Here's what I'll add. I loved that. I would just say that when I'm feeling that there's a tension or a conflict, whether it's in someone inside or with two people, because I do a lot of relational work and leadership work with teens and couples. What I find is that the parts are in a sense standing for a value. Maybe even more than one, but often there's one that's kind of loudly where they're flying that banner for that value in our lives. And so when we can look underneath the part, which might be presenting in various ways that where that's not what's being broadcasted. You know, you might feel resistance or age regression or many other ways that they might be expressing themselves. But what's really going on under the surface is there's a value that's actually worth standing for, that's worth putting energy towards. And if we can sort of co-discover that with our clients and go, okay, here is that value. How do we then use the senior consciousness, use the kind of the parts of the self that are more developed, more online, the wisest parts of us, to figure out how to help that value be exactly what the client is experiencing more of. And so I always presuppose that the part, even if it has a shadow way of expressing itself on some level, has a light side, and that light side is that value that we're being kind of conscripted for. And that part is like on the team of that value, trying to make sure that the system has more of that. And so I feel like that understanding and looking underneath any complaint that a client has, I can usually listen for any tension or any complaint in the system from any party and go underneath and even hear, this is what they're actually fighting for. This is a value that actually everyone would be better off if there was more of in the system. And so I think understanding that really helps in that process. There aren't any parts that don't have some positive, in the NLP lingo, we talk about the positive intended outcome, right? Meaning what's the thing that part wants for you that is good for you and you would agree with. And that positive intended outcome is always present. And so if you understand that that's there, I think that you have a much easier time loving those parts and helping the client do the same, and then coming up with a way to have them on board. So that everyone's more aligned in the system, right? Then you've got, in essence, instead of one person, I see it as like, you can get the whole team of thousands of parts all moving in the same direction towards the thing you want. So it's not like you only have one of you, you've got all of you. And it's like, now I'm just awakening all this team that's really on board. So that's just the last little piece I'd add on that.
Love that. Love that. And then if you extend this out a little bit, Jennifer, how are you then, so this is a process of helping someone with more alignment in themselves. And then how does that translate between two people? Maybe they're in a partnership or a team, or gets really exponentially complex, but share how that might work.
Sure. Well, so, we've talked a little bit about internalized parts, but as I started to apply some of these understandings to relationship work and conflict resolution work, which I do a lot of, what you find is that your partner or your loved one is often an external version, is an external representation of your internal parts. And so, especially when you're really engaged and really involved with one another, we often will project outside of ourselves the parts of us that we're not all the way right with internally. And then our partners will represent those parts for us. And so often in a relational dynamic, that's what I'm actually seeing, is that you can kind of see, as an individual, you can look out there and see, how are the people around me responding to me on any given topic? And if they're mirroring back to you resistance, they're actually showing you your own resistance, right? They're showing you pieces of your own parts. And so that's one piece of how it happens relationally. But so we do externalize and project our parts on the people around us. And when we do that, because they're often so unconscious, that when we actually project them unconsciously, we're actually able to see and work with them, because there's a literal human being that you have to deal with right in front of you that's now taking a part that was hidden, that now into the light and now as a projected part of you. So that dynamic is really fun to understand and play with in relational contexts. In addition, to me, I feel like we go on in life kind of like this. It's like, so there you are, young as a child, and you're faced with a dilemma. And on that path and that dilemma, you you had to choose one, path A or path B. And so if you chose path A, you were in that dilemma willing to give up a little bit of B in order to have A. And so you made that choice in that moment, right? And then you walked along and you found kind of a similar dilemma, and you again chose that same A, that same path. You gave up a little of B in order to have A. And so there you are, and your personality is sort of starts to get built around compensating for not having B in your life. And you've developed a strength around having A, right? And then you meet a partner. And what I see happening often is that partner has chosen B more often than you have. And so they're mysterious and amazing to you, because the very thing that you've longed for, because you've had a sacrifice relationship to it, they have in spades. They are sitting there having made the opposite choice of you. So what do? You marry them because you're so awed and inspired by who they are. So that happens sometimes in relationships. And so we get into these relationships, and like one side has chosen A, one side has chosen B. And at the beginning, that's really wonderful. But in a moment, you as a team have to make that same choice. And you are in conflict now, because the very thing that you were awed by becomes the very thing you're confounded by in your partner, because they've chosen the opposite part. They've chosen the opposite value, really, in their life. Now, in that moment, you're angry because they are doing the thing that you think was the wrong way, and your way is the right way, and so it creates that tension and conflict. So for me, when I see that, I can see these as internalized parts, each fighting for their value, being conscripted in the war to create that tension. And so relationally, what I'm usually doing is seeing that polarity as a part and looking at the trade-offs that they've each made and the compensations that they've each made, and looking at, okay, well, how do we create this more as a both and, as a yin yang versus a sacrifice? And so that's a lot of the work that I'm doing relationally with people, is noting those polarities, right? One side shows truth, the other side shows harmony. And one is willing to give up on harmony in order to have truth, because it's okay if your feelings are hurt, but we need to be authentic and real. The harmony person says, well, it's okay to give up on saying what's true because it's way more important that we're in harmony. And so you can see truth and harmony battling it out. So these are both parts of ourselves. We both want both. So how do we actually find ways of expressing those together and realize that our partners are actually just representing a value that we would actually long to have more of? So that, I feel like that's happening in the dynamics as well, relationally.
Wow.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And the part that you are awed by, for just a second there, part of me wanted to hear that word spelled ODD.
Yeah. Awed by it because it's odd. Yeah.
Carl, I know that this question may lead us down a 3-month course description, but I love what Jennifer's talking about, the people in our lives mirroring unexpressed aspects of ourselves, or unloved, as yet unloved parts of ourselves. And you talk a lot about that we live in a mirroring universe. And I'm wondering if you can share the rudiments of what that means.
The rudiments of the mirroring universe. Yeah. Okay.
Just give us the rudimentary.
Small question.
We don't, yes, because we don't.
What are the rudiments of the universe?
Step 1, go get yourself a universe. Step 2, arrive in physical reality someplace, sometime, begin to have the experiences that go with that. Step 3 usually takes about less than a minute to go. What is going on here? How come it's like this? Whatever the next step is, start to try to discover how humans can possibly be having the experience that they're having. Humans are famous all over the galaxy for having experiences that they don't want and not having the experiences that they do want. And I have it on reliable authority that you can't just go do that any place. The planet Earth is one of the prime destination resorts to have that kind of experience for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so we'll spend many thousands of years trying to figure out who's in charge, and then we'll spend many more thousands of years trying to figure out what we have to do or be so that whoever's in charge will arrange for us to have the experience we would like, or at least not give us too much of what we don't want. And consciousness evolves, and eventually a lot of minds and a lot of hearts and a lot of places and times just kind of notice, what if we have the experience that goes with where we are putting our attention, not just consciously, but other than consciously? What if the universe does not violate our free will? What if it just mirrors it back to us so that we can catch on to what's causing what leads to what's the source of what? And then we'll have to, we're just kind of starting as a culture to do that. And I'm looking forward to being able to talk with both of you in about 10,000 years. So we can look back and notice just how remarkably well that all unfolded.
Mm-hmm. A spiritual teacher of mine that I adore said that you are the universe you formerly thought you were inside of, meaning that it's a perfect fidelity reflection of your consciousness. And so we live in a universe where that perhaps if we decide to believe in that presupposition that that's the case. So,
and it will not violate our free will.
No, because it is a reflection of us. So it would be like getting mad at the mirror for frowning. When you're frowning, you'd have to internally decide to smile. Right?
I think I'm pretty sure the universe does wince a lot.
Right.
Like that, but yeah, it remains honest and true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, beautiful.
Mm.
And by the way, I think truth and harmony would be in addition to being an amazing context for relationship work, would be great names for cats.
Truth and harm. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Where's truth? I can find harmony. I'm having trouble finding truth.
yeah.
Have you looked under the bed? I looked under the bed.
That's excellent. So one last question, the involved question. Are there other ways you're looking for and spotting misalignment in order, obviously, to align, and specifically through the body and words, right? Neuro-linguistic programming really pays attention to words, to the physiology in the body. So we'll start with you, Jennifer, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah, language, body, words.
Yeah, I feel like it's all of those things. You get a really incredible toolbox of skills to be able to notice what seem to many people as incredibly subtle shifts and changes in people's physiology. I think, I've done an exercise where we brought people to the front of the room and just had them say, "Hi, my name is," and then their name, and then what it is that they do. And then we spent like 30 minutes talking about all of the things that were broadcast, just from how they walked, what they said, what the tone of their voice was, how pinched or open their voice was, how tentative or assured or convicted their voice was, whether their posture was forward, back, rounded, in various structural language shapes that can occur for people when they walk. And in the voice, how fast or slow or relaxed that they seemed, what emotions or ages showed up on their faces. You can often, in a moment, see someone regress into various ages. And there's this idea that we're not actually the one age we think we are. We're all of those ages all at once, right? And so you can see those flashing on people's faces. And, if you've ever watched yourself or anyone be in an argument, you definitely get to see like the petulant teenager and the crying inconsolable 3-year-old and so on and so forth. So I feel like we're given a lot of tools in order to be able to actually, with even when they're very, very subtle, see all of those parts flash before our eyes. And so part of our spotting of these misaligned or aligned parts is to really just watch for that physiologically. And if you want to help align them, if you can get in rapport with those parts, both physically with your body posture, tonally and auditorily with your voice, and emotionally resonant with them, then you're going to have a much easier time having them say, this coach, this person I can talk to, she gets me, she sees me, she understands me. So I think there's a lot of spotting that misalignment through watching even just the body physiology. So that's a piece. And when people see us do that, and can take 5 seconds of someone saying just a few words and then give them a readout for 20 or 30 minutes of everything that they got, everything that they're transmitting, it looks like magic. And really, it's incredibly learnable. And I think Carl is one of the best teachers of this that I've ever seen. Paul Ekman did some work on this in his day, where he was teaching people how to spot when you're lying or not. He was looking at micro gestures, micro expressions. And so there's a lot going on under the surface, even in a very short period of time, that you can pick up on. And so that's a piece. Yeah.
Beautiful. And we haven't talked so much about that aspect. Carl, anything you want to add about this part of the training, which is, it does feel magical and it's very, very learnable?
One of the ways to describe the good NLP teaching and learning is it's a behavioral and perceptual toolbox that allows people to be more in rapport with themselves and any other humans. And so part of it is learning to notice, as Jennifer is speaking about, and then understand and be able to use certain like signals that bodies send, all human bodies do. I mean, everybody. And learn to connect that with the experience that the person is having. It's not mind reading, but it is learning that when such and such a thing happens in the person's breath or their movement or their voice or their eyeballs, for that person, that experience is connected, that bit of external behavior is connected with something internal for them, and that connection is going to be really consistent. Unique for them, perhaps general for all humans, but really, really consistent. So this is a wonderful thing to teach people. I really enjoy teaching it, and I really enjoy it right up until the time that they start to direct it back at me. And then I always think twice about doing it again.
Why did I do that? Why did I teach them this?
No, I gave you the tools to get under my hood.
Yes.
It's great.
Beautiful.
But we only do it with permission, because otherwise there's, I mean, why even try?
Yeah.
Just for the sake of time, I have two last questions. Can I ask you, Jennifer, anything you want to say to Carl, to NLP Marin, to Transformational NLP?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to me, to me, the way I relate to NLP is it's absolutely required and fundamental if you're interested at all in leadership or change work, and you want to understand how it is that we create our experience. And probably more than any other modality that I've studied, and I've studied dozens at this point, for me, this foundation is the best taught understanding of how we generate reality. And Carl, your teaching style is one, not only do you get a sense of how the depth and breadth of understanding of NLP through doing this work, but for me, more than any other training I've ever been in, as a student, I left knowing how to do it. I left knowing how to put it into practice. That's saying so much. The nuance and sophistication with which you are taught all of this change work, and it's an incredible body of change work. We've only touched on the surface of a few different pieces, but the way that they structure the learning is and the way that it's paced allows you to have done it and experienced it and understood it step by step, like paint by numbers. Anyone can learn this in ways that I've never seen any other training do quite to that degree. So I just want to say my hat's off to you guys for all of the sophistication and understanding, not only the topic, but how to actually be true teachers of it. Because those two don't always go together. The experts that often get asked to teach don't often have the craft of teaching at the level that the Marin NLP has with transformational NLP. So thank you so much for that, because I left that training just being, humble but confident that I could learn, practice, and grow my ability in putting this stuff into practice, not just leaving the course with, wow, aren't those guys brilliant? They're great, but I can't do this work, which is a lot of trainings you go to. You leave there thinking the teacher's great, but you don't feel like you have any contact with creating the kind of change that the teachers do, that the master practitioners do. And I did leave feeling like I could be on that road. And of course, there's a road of more and more practice. I'm not saying that you become like Carl overnight, but he definitely gives you everything you need. So yeah.
Wow, thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
And we do start with a bit of paint by numbers, and by the time we're done, we release everyone with the glory of their own blank canvases.
Yes.
To just develop their ingenuity and creativity and pull everything from their whole life together. and use that to, well, to move things along, shall we say, for everyone. So it's really rewarding. It's really fun. I'm quite struck by what you just said, Jennifer. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, yeah. I've never seen it paralleled anywhere. I mean, it's unparalleled. Yeah.
Well.
Yes.
And I'm picky, so you may not know that about me, but I'm really picky. I don't like how anyone teaches. Like I'm hard to please. And I left just absolutely delighted and empowered and inspired and feeling capable and knowledgeable. So thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nicely
Wonderful.
done.
Yes.
For all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Last question. This is for both of you, a kind of synopsis. If you could leave our audience with one thing about transformation, this is what you wish they would take away, what would that be?
I have one right away. It's a team sport for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I think I'll say, that everything a person experiences is a perfect reflection of the degree of alignment in their inner parts. And the most confounding challenges, persistent and unexplained limitations, or the mysterious sabotage patterns, they can be easily explained through potentially resolved by discovering the role that an unintegrated and other than conscious part plays in creating those experiences. So if you can understand that, then the world is your oyster.
Beautiful. All right, so we'll have links to follow to learn more about Jennifer and her great work, and Carl and NLP Marin's great work. And for now, let me say thank you. What a rich and heartfelt conversation. I'm so glad to have been a part. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for the work you do.
Yeah.
You've affected a lot of our lives, and it's such a pleasure to support your work. We've sent so many students to you over the years. We just love the work you do. We can really stand behind it. So just thank you. Yeah.
Well said.
Excellent.
With that, we'll call this conversation complete.
Okay.
But we'll see you on the other ones. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you,
Have a great
everyone.
day.
So much.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.